We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin and Beis in Meseches Nedarim. This is Nedarim Daf 27b. On the previous summit, the Gemara was discussing a case where a person deposits his documents by Bezdin, and he says, if I don't come back within a certain amount of time, these documents should be batel, and I can no longer use these documents to win the case. Then an onus happened, he didn't come, and so Rav Huna said, well, he didn't come, therefore the documents are batel. And Rava said, why should that be the case? It's a situation of an onus over here, and we understand that by onus, a person is pater, and so therefore in this case, the documents should not be batel. And so the Gemara asks, well, what's the difference? There's a case by a get, a very similar situation. A person says, if I don't come back within a certain amount of time, then this should be a get. And then he didn't come back because he died. And so the halach over there is that it is in fact an effective get. So if you're going to say that a person can claim onus, over here was certainly an onus. He didn't return because he died, and therefore the get should not take effect. And the Gemara says, no, it could be different by the case of the get. You have a yoda demis, because had he known that he was going to die, and that's why he wouldn't return, actually min la'alter have a gomer v'yoav gita. He would have actually wanted it to be a get immediately. That is really the whole point. So in that particular case, if he didn't come back because of the fact that he died, that actually is his intention that it should be a get, and that's why in that case it actually is considered a good get. And the Mefarish over here says, had he known at the time of the condition that he would die within the time frame, he certainly would have given a get from right now. So hilkach have a get. That's why in this case it's for sure a get. He's considering all along in his mind that it should be a get. He's understanding if I don't return, and that would include a situation where I don't return because I die, then it should be a good get. So there's no claim of onus in this case. But in the case of the documents, if he knew that there was an onus and he wouldn't arrive, he wouldn't want to have his documents be batel for that reason. Therefore, it wasn't in his mind to make the kinyan in that particular situation. But the Gemara continues, but what's the difference from the following case? A person said to them, and he said, if I don't come back within 30 days, again, a similar kind of case, if I don't return within 30 days, he said this should be a get. Also, paske maver. So then he came and he got stopped by the crossing. And so the Gemara continues, he said to them, chazuda asoy, see, I'm trying to come, I just couldn't get on the ferry that was going to take me over the river. V'yamar Shmuel, and Shmuel said, lo shmei masya, that's not called coming, he hasn't arrived, and he's not able to claim onus, and we say that it is in fact going to be a good get. And so the Gemara says again, Amai, why should that be a good get? V'hameinas onus, he certainly can claim onus in that case. He wants to have arrived back except for the onus, and therefore we should say it's as if he arrived, and we should say that it's not a get. And the Gemara says to that, Dilma onsa de megalia shani, maybe by an onus that is apparent to all, meaning this is something he should have planned for, so that's different. Umavra miglionsi, when it comes to a crossing over the river, that's something that is apparent that an onus might happen. He might not be able to get across the river. He should have taken it into consideration, and therefore, since he did not return in the 30 days, which he said he would return, therefore in this particular case, it is going to be a good get. But the Gemara continues, Ula Rav Huna, but according to Rav Huna, again, Rav Huna is the one who says that if an onus happened and the person didn't return, so all of those documents are in fact batel. But why should that be the case? Michli, let us see. Asmachtahi, isn't this called an asmachta? An asmachta is a situation where a person makes a kinyan depending on a certain outcome. He makes something along the lines of a bet, and the halach in general is v'asmachta lo kanyan. Asmachta is not really a good kinyan. When a person says, I'm going to give this to you if such and such happens, and it's a case of an asmachta, we assume the person really intended that the condition be fulfilled. The person did not really intend that the alternative would happen, and therefore in this case as well, he really wanted to return, and so therefore if he doesn't return, he doesn't really have an intention to be mevatel his documents. We should say asmachtas lo kanya. And the Gemara says, Shani hacha, no, it's different over here. The mitvason zechusan, because over here, the bezdin is actually holding the documents. And so if the bezdin is holding the documents, it's as if it's already been collected and under the control of the bezdin, and that's not called an asmachta, and therefore in this case, if he doesn't come in the allotted time, the documents actually will be batel. But the Gemara says, "V'hecha de mitzvasin lav asmachti." Is that really true that when he's given it over to a third party, that's not an asmachta? But we learned in a Mishnah, Misha para mixas chovo. Let's say a person pays up part of his debt. V'hishlish eshtaro. So then he takes the document and he gives it to a third party. He doesn't want the original lender to have the document because then that lender will be able to collect everything, but he's already paid part of it. V'yamar, but the person who paid part of it says, Imeinani nosein, lo mikanad laman yom, if I don't pay him the full thing within 30 days, 10 lo shtaro, he tells the third party, you can give him back his shtar, he'll be able to collect the whole thing. Higiyazman v'lo nasa, now the time comes, the 30 days, and he has not yet paid the whole thing. Rabbi Yossi omer yitain, Rabbi Yossi says he can give it, meaning the third party can give the document over, and the whole thing can be collected. For Rabbi Yehuda omer lo yitain, and Rabbi Yehuda says that he shouldn't give it over in this particular case, and the Gemara continues, V'yamar of Nachman Amar Rabba bar Avu Amar Rav, and Rav Nachman says that Rabba bar Avu says that Rav says, Ein halacha Rabbi Yossi, Damar asmachta kanya. The halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi, who's saying over here that asmachta is kanya. Rather, this is considered an asmachta, and it is not kona. In other words, the halacha in this case is, even though he deposited the document by a third party, still we say that's considered an asmachta. He intended all along to pay everything up within 30 days, and therefore it is not a good kinyan, because he really did not intend that this person should get the document back and be able to collect the entire debt. And you see from here that even though it's in the hands of a third party, it is still considered an asmachta. And so the Gemara answers, Shani hacha, no, it's different over here by the case where the person deposited his documents in the Bezdin, because it's not only in the hands of a third party, but the Yamar Levadlan Zechusa, he also said that all of his Zechuyos, all of these documents should be batel, which is in even stronger language, as the Mefarish says, Shani hacha damar Levadlan Zechusa shelo yehi bahen mamish. He said they should be considered like nothing. Dezeu chamr mitein lo shtar. That's even more strict than when a person gives it to a third party and says, give him the shtar if I don't pay back within a certain amount of time. And the Gemara continues, V'hilchasan, the halacha is asmachta kanya, that an asmachta is kona. However, v'huda lo ones, that's only true if there was no ones. V'huda kanu minei bebezdin choshev, and that's also only true if the kinyan was made in a bezdin choshev. And the Mefarish over here explains, V'hilchasan, the halacha is asmachta kanya v'afa gav de lo mitzvahs, and asmachta can be kona even if it's not given over to a third party. V'huda lo ones, that's as long as there was no onus, bo'ons of the mucha, talking about an onus that is clear, l'inchi, it's clear to people, like the onus before where he was stopped by the crossing. Also, there has to be a kinyan made that he won't go back on this particular asmachta. He has to make this kinyan in a bezin choshev. It's considered that it's an expert bezdin in the eyes of the public. You need to have all three of these conditions. If you only have one of these conditions without the other, lo kani, then the asmachta will not be kona. You need to have all three. It needs to be no onus, and there's a kinyan, and the kinyan has to be in a bezdin choshev. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Nodrin laharagin ulecharabin ulemuchsin. You can take a neder to murderers or robbers or to tax collectors, shehi truma, that something is truma, afal pi she'eino truma, even though it's not really truma. Shein shel beis hamelech, or that something belongs to the house of the king, afal pi she'eino shel beis hamelech, even though it really doesn't belong to the king. Beis Shammai yomer b'chol nodrin. Beis Shammai say in all of these situations one can take a neder. And the Mefarish over here explains laharagin shu horeg al iskei mamon. We're talking about somebody who will kill over money matters. Shem bo lahargo, meaning the person is coming and there's a threat of death. Yachol lader al zeh shu shel truma. He can testify about this particular property that it's truma. V'yomer neder zeh olai yemeino shel truma. He can say, I'm making this neder if it's not truma. Afal v'sheino shel truma, even though it's not truma. Kedei shelo yitlam. He's doing that in order that it shouldn't be collected. Lefi sheyesh chiyuv misal azu, because here you have the death, you have the possibility of death involved. V'haneder mutter, the neder will be totally mutter. V'hainu nami nidrei onsin. This is another example of nidrei onsin, the nedarim that are made in circumstances beyond one's control. Well, the charamin shu listim bialma she'eno horeg, even charamin, which is just robbers who don't necessarily kill. Well, the muchsim notel mechas hamelech, that's the tax collector. V'rotzalitel perosa bal karchu, he's trying to take away his fruits against his will. Aval bi she'enon shel truma, even though he's saying it's truma, even if it's not truma. Yachol lider she'ein shel truma, he can say a neder that it's truma. Kedei shelo yitlam, in order that it not be taken away. Umas nisan, and the structure of the Mishnah is lo zu avzu katani. Not only in this case, meaning not only by someone who's going to kill you, but even by a robber who's not going to kill you, and even by a tax collector. In all of these cases, you can take this neder that it's not truma, even though it really is truma. Bechol nodrim, and Beis Shammai say you can make a neder lahem to them in all situations. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph.